actually, I mean, don't quote me on this, but I believe we are the largest rutabaga grower east of the Mississippi.
This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. On today's show, we're combining the three things that I love the most: food and the outdoors. Okay, and beer. But, well, today we're combining two of the three. I'm at Thomas Farm in Corinth. Now, you may not have ever been there, but you're probably seeing their produce. Fresh vegetables are in every Hannaford across the state. A variety of local farmers provide the benefits of a local harvest, and one of the biggest is Thomas Farm. Mainers are becoming much more conscious about where their food comes from. Farmers markets are doing well, the Harvest Festival in Bangor does well every November, and Hannaford's has been doing well because these days they can provide shoppers food that is incredibly fresh and healthful. We're going to see how it's done this morning. I'm standing in the farmyard with Paul Thomas, and he's going to show me exactly why it's important to know where your food comes from. Food you can trust. He's on right after I remind you that Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Doors Equipment, Bar Harbor Whale Watch, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. Paul Thomas, I seem to have walked into a beehive of activity here at Thomas Farms.
Yeah, it's a busy time of year for us.
Is this a typical morning? Because
this is actually a slow morning for us. This is a day off, kind of, where we can catch up on what we need. So there's no orders going out today. But we have a lot of pumpkin orders and squash orders this time of year that we need to fill, and day off makes a good day to do it.
I look around and I see large bins full of squash and pumpkins. I see potatoes. I see corn stalks. And I see forklifts moving around, loading onto trucks. There are at least a half a dozen, maybe more people out in the yard moving produce around. And this is a slow morning?
Yeah, this would be a slow morning. Typically, we would have 10, 12 people in the fields picking stuff that we're checking on, constantly bringing stuff in, going and seeing if they're all set, if they have any questions for the day. Mm-hmm. This is actually kind of a laid back, kind of enjoy the day.
I can't believe this is laid back. It just looks so busy. But I'll move past that. How long has Thomas Farms been here? Because it's been here as long as I remember. I've been here a long time.
My late uncle bought it in 1963, and we're still going strong today. We was back then a potato farm, and we raised chip stock right up through till 2002. We grew our last crop for Cape Cod, and that year they cut our contracts, and we decided we had to do something different. And 2003, we started at 15 acres of vegetables, and now we're up to close to 200 acres of vegetables.
200 acres?
Yes.
That sounds like a lot of work to me.
It is. Yeah. It is. We don't get much time off.
Well, things should go smoothly unless some radio guy shows up to interrupt your morning. What do you grow now?
Well, in the spring, we start off with peas and beet greens. As we get later on in the year, summer squash, zucchini, cucumbers, green beans. We really start being busy when the sweet corn comes to market. That's when we start delivering to stores 6 days a week. That way, Hannaford has it fresh right there every morning for them. And then after sweet corn, there's squash and mini pumpkins, potatoes. We do a lot of potatoes with Hannafords. They've been a good market for us to grow back into some potatoes. And then we get later in the fall, we get rutabagas. We start filling buildings with squash, rutabagas, and potatoes to take us through the winter, and we'll stop shipping about 1st of April, mid-April, we'll stop shipping. We'll finally be out of product.
Can you relax for like several days?
Oh, no. Once April comes, we are getting ready for planting. We'll have the greenhouses going, and I can't remember how many years it's been since I've gone on a springtime fishing trip. It hasn't happened.
Do you get to fish at any time during the year at all?
When I take my little daughter with me, I make sure I can take her fishing a few times in the spring just for white perch or something off the side of a road someplace.
Yeah. Well, what kind of corn do you grow? Because when I was growing up, it was like butter and sugar, sugar and gold, and that was it. That's changed.
It has changed. There are more varieties of sweet corn out there than I could even begin to name.
Yeah.
They are... We only raise what you would consider the sugar and gold. It's yellow and white corn, but there's so many different varieties. I couldn't begin to tell you. And all of our corn is GMO free as a request of Hannaford on their local corn. So we've chose to have no GMOs on our farm.
So how does all this get picked? You've got a bunch of guys out here, but that can't be all the picking.
It's picked by hand. Everything you see in the yard in front of you today came into the farm by hand, out of the field by hand, into the green tubs that we have, and then it's put on a trailer behind a tractor and brought to the farm and stored or sorted and washed, and goes from there.
When it comes right down to it, this is the way farming has been going on for a long time. It really hasn't changed that much.
No, there is not the technology into the vegetables that there is into potatoes, corn. There is some stuff out there that can mechanically pick it, but it's basically done by hand.
Yep, just the way it always has been. I wonder how many people realize when they go into Hannaford, they see vegetables there from Thomas Farm, that each one of those items has been lovingly taken care of.
Yeah, it's amazing they what it takes. We actually are still picking our potatoes by hand right now. They're looking really good coming out of the fields, picking them by hand. So instead of changing over to our mechanical harvester that we'll use this fall, we've continued to pick them by hand, and just because of the quality of them is so good.
Of course, in the old days, the best way to pick them all by hand was to have a whole lot of kids.
Yeah,
and then send them out in the field. That doesn't happen so much anymore.
No, we have some kids that work for us in the summertime when they're on school vacation, but the only problem we run into is kids have got to go back to school, and we are actually busier in the fall than we are in the summer.
That must be problematic, just finding people who are able to work for seasonally like this.
It is. Yeah. It is. I'm very fortunate this year. We've got some really good crew on hand. It's worked out good. Years past, we haven't had so good a luck, but you take it year by year and keep looking forward. We got about 300 crates we need to fill with squash to put in storage this year. When I say a crate, the crate measures 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot and will hold approximately 1,200 pounds of squash, and we have 300 of them to fill this year.
All right, this is how sick my mind is, but do the squash on the bottom get squashed on a 4-foot crate? Or
No. You have to handle a squash just like you would handle an egg. If it would break an egg, it's going to bruise a squash. So you set them in the crates very gingerly, and as you do that, they seem to be all right.
Okay. Where do you sell? Because the more I become familiar with Thomas Farms, the more I see your name in a lot of places.
Our main market is Hannaford. Without Hannaford, we wouldn't be where we are today. Like I said, in 2003, it was 15 acres. 2004, we got our first Hannaford store. And from there, it has just blossomed into, I think I'm up to 18 Hannaford stores. Plus, I also go to their distribution center in Scarborough. And without them, we wouldn't be where we are today. Their push for local has just allowed us to do wonderful things on our farm.
I'm beyond thrilled about that. And the reason I've been wanting to do this radio show for years, ever since I think I first walked into a Hannaford and said, Thomas Farms, I know those guys. They're selling local food now, because I tell this story a lot. Nothing bothers me more than going into a supermarket and seeing the asparaguses from Peru.
Yeah, it is nice to have the local, and they will continue to buy from me right until I'm down to, I have nothing left to sell from them. I've sold potatoes to the Hannafords right up until May, and it just keeps going, and it just surprises me every year how much more I can move into the stores and how supportive they are of getting the local farmers going.
Yeah. Now, I'm in the state legislature. I represent Corinth. I'm very concerned about rural economic development issues. To me, I look around this area and I say, okay, what is the potential for improving our economy? And it comes down to forestry and agriculture. We can grow a lot of food here.
We can. Maine is a difficult state the further north you get to grow some crops, just because of the cold weather. But the fall crops is what I really shine on. The squash, the potatoes, the rutabagas. Those are going to grow for me almost no matter what happens. We have real good crops of those. The tomatoes, the peppers, we do decent in those. But it's all weather related. But we do have the potential to grow a lot of food here.
Yeah. When I look around at your 200 acres, I see a lot of fields that look like they are fallow right now, that they're regenerating the nitrogen content.
The fields you're looking at are fields that have done their job for the year. We have disked the crop under and put it on a cover crop of winter rye that will hold the soil in place. If we was to get a torrential downpour, instead of the soil running down the hill, it's going to stay where it should be because of the cover crop, and that cover crop will gather up what nutrients are free in the soil. And when we plow that crop under in the spring, those nutrients in turn will go to the crop that's being planted.
We're on site at Thomas Farm in Corinth. This is where your food comes from. These vegetables are in every Hannaford. Paul Thomas is walking me through it. Hannaford, of course, has standards that all their farmers must meet so that you can be confident about the food you're buying. What are those standards? I'll be asking that next when Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine returns in a moment on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. I can't remember exactly which year, but I started to notice local farm products turning up in the grocery shelves at Hannaford earlier this decade. I remember thinking, well, it's about time. A lot of Mainers want to know where their food comes from, and a lot of it is coming from right where I'm standing, right here. Thomas Farm in Corinth. Maybe I'm weird, but I like to buy local, eat local, and I'm not all that excited about produce that traveled a long way to get to my table. Paul Thomas is with me, and I've got to assume, Paul, that Hannaford has some pretty high standards that you have to meet.
They do. Hannaford has standards, and when I first got into vegetables, I said, I don't know if I'll be able to do it or not, but the Hannaford standards are easy to meet if you can do a good quality job. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've been able to do, and by doing that, we've been able to grow our market with Hannaford. They do require GAP, which is good agricultural practices. Mm-hmm. There's assistance out there to help with that. And it actually really opens your eyes as to, I didn't know by me eating a sandwich at lunch and then going to the field, I could actually take something from me and transfer it. So it's all about hand washing, and it's common sense stuff that you don't typically think about, but it brings it to the forefront. Mm-hmm. And it's a good program, and I'm glad to be doing it for Hannaford.
What kind of standards of appearance are there? Because I think about the green peppers I used to grow, and they were never completely green. But you don't see a greenish-reddish one in the supermarkets very much.
No. I mean, every item for Hannaford has got different specs. Your squash has got to weigh so much, but can't weigh more than a certain amount. The peppers, no defect free. Everything has got a size to them. Mm-hmm. And they supply that to the farmers, so you know what you're shipping. They like to have everything washed and going into the stores clean. Nobody wants to go into a grocery store and pick up a squash that's been sitting out in the field and has got an inch of mud on it. I mean, that doesn't fly. You just have to keep everything clean and going in the stores looking good in appearance. It's sad to say, but it's almost appearance is what sells now versus taste.
Yeah. Now, for products that may have some kind of a blemish, obviously that's not waste. You can do things with those.
We can. Our squash is one that we work with. It's mainly butternut. If we see one that has a blemish that won't meet the Hannaford specs, we've got a peeling operation at our farm. We'll be firing up in end of October, 1st November. So a squash that has a blemish, we can cut that blemish out, cube it up, and put it into a bag and sell it to Hannaford that way. And we can do the same with our rutabagas. Mm-hmm. If we have rutabagas that are too big or have blemishes on them, we can process those and send those to Hannaford as a processed food. There's another farm I work with down in Saco. They do a lot of Cubana squash for the Hannaford warehouse down there, and they buy a lot of my blemish squash from me to use for their operation.
Yeah, when you walk into a Hannaford, you see not only Thomas Farm, but a bunch of other farms too, some in Newport, really a lot from all over the state of Maine. How much cooperation is there between the farms these days, or is it competition?
Some farms work together and other farms are in competition. I have several farms that I work with. They're mainly in the southern part of the state. And it's all in who you're friends with and who you click. It's kind of like, picking friends. Not everybody gets along, so you pick and choose who you want to work with.
And that's life.
It is. It is.
That's not just farming. Well, let's take a look around a little bit. Can you show me what?
Sure.
What is there to see right now? We're right in front of the fresh vegetables barn. What goes on in there?
That is actually a squash storage building. Mm-hmm. We built that. Its original purpose in life was to be equipment storage. Then Hannaford said they would like to start getting squash from us from their warehouse. So it quickly went from an equipment storage building to being a squash storage building. It can hold approximately 300 crates that I was talking about earlier. It's got a ventilation system in it, dehumidifiers in it. It's temperature controlled. And we said, we got enough room. A year later, we're building on. We built one wing on one side that was intended to be just dry storage. That ended up being potato storage. And then the following year, we built a wing on the other side to put our wash plant in for our squash. And we're set up now. We could ship 2 tractor-trailer truckloads a day of squash to Hannaford if we needed to the warehouse.
Mm-hmm. This is a dumb question, but I don't know any smart ones. There are some vegetables or some products that you can't store together. Apples and potatoes comes to mind.
Yeah, like our squash and our potatoes, they take different temperatures, different humidities. So we have different buildings for everything that we grow. This whole building here will just have squash in it when it comes time. And there's actually types of squash that can't be stored together. They require different temperatures. So we got another building for that.
Oh, great. That's an investment in squash.
It is, but it does pay off in the end.
Yeah. Now, this building right here that we're looking at, this is much longer than a bowling alley.
It is roughly 80 feet long by 50 feet wide, and it's got a 16-foot high ceiling in it.
And can you stack crates on top of each other?
We can. We will stack the crates 3 high in this building, and when it is full, you're looking for a place to walk because it's not there.
Yeah, I'm doing the math in my head, looking at those 4x4x4s, saying, okay, how many hundreds of those crates could you put in here? And it's a big number.
You take a look around the corner, you'll see how many crates we have.
Well, let's look. Let's walk over there.
And every year we have to buy a few new ones.
Holy moly.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. Yeah. But we should only be... When we start bringing squash in, we should be done in 10 to 12 days bringing squash in. Mm-hmm. The crew can usually fill 30 crates a day.
Do Mainers really eat that much squash?
Yeah. Yes, they do.
Because I'm not doing my part.
I am actually only one of 4 farmers that ship squash to Hannaford.
Really?
To the warehouse. I mean, there's a lot more other farms out there that go directly to the Hannaford stores, but as far as Maine farms that go to the Hannaford DC1 in South Portland, there's 4 of us.
Okay, how do I put this? I eat zucchini. In fact, I had zoot from Thomas Farm for dinner last night. But I don't eat most squash. Never did, never liked it. So how much are you eating? Anyway, we're at Thomas Farm in Corinth, a major local supplier of produce that you are probably eating. Buy local, eat local. I see where they grow it. I know where they sell it. How does it get from here to there? Hey, if you want to know where your food comes from, that's the kind of question you ask. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. Saturday mornings at 9, Sunday mornings at 8 on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. At one time, we had 4 major industries: shipbuilding, lumber, fishing, and agriculture. Take the small town of Bradford, Maine. It was an agricultural hub. There were more people living there in 1890 than 1990 due to farming. Next door, it's a little harder to understand the population of Corinth back in 1890 because it really was 3 different villages back then: East Corinth, West Corinth, and South Corinth. Still, it was not only an important farming town 115 years ago, it still is. Thomas Farm in Corinth supplies much of the local produce found at your local Hannafords. Today's show is all about knowing where your food comes from. It comes from here. But how does it get to you? Paul Thomas is with me. So what's the distribution network really? Do you take produce to a distribution center or directly to each store?
Well, we do both, actually. I have trucks that run 6 days a week, 2 trucks that run directly to Hannaford stores. I will call the stores in the morning, get their order from them for the following day, and it will be at their doorstep that morning. Usually my trucks are back to the farm by noontime on the day they're delivering, so we don't waste any time to get it there quick. Then we also on our squash and our rutabagas, that goes to Hannaford's distribution center in South Portland, and they distribute it to other stores that may not have farms that can supply what the stores need, or enough quantity, or some stores may not be as fortunate to have a local farm that does supply them.
Yeah. So some stuff, especially the produce that keeps for quite a while, will go to the distribution center. Local stuff like corn, you might take it around to the local stores.
Yeah, I take that to local stores, but that also goes to the distribution center. Not my corn. There's Grant Farms down in Saco, and he does a real good job on corn, and he takes a lot of corn to the Hannaford distribution center. And people think, oh, geez, it's coming out of the warehouse, it's going to be old. It's not that way anymore. What Grant delivers there today will be out their door tomorrow.
And for God's sakes, what's coming in from abroad is old.
Exactly.
This is fresh no matter how you cut it.
Yes.
So how about packaging? Are you required to package anything, or does it all go in unpackaged?
We package everything. We started back when we first started shipping to Hannaford's. We invested in plastic containers, and then we got looking at it as kind of a Go Green initiative. It saves a cardboard box. These plastic containers we use are returnable. The stores have been great on returning them to us. The more we grow, the more cardboard we have had to buy, but that goes to Hannaford and it goes into their recycling program they have. So it's still a green initiative. So, yeah, it's anywhere from plastic crates to cardboard boxes to paper bags for potatoes. It's a non-ending battle.
This is like more than a full-time job. It's not just growing it. It's not just picking it, but even keeping up with the times, with how things are packaged and distributed, how to deal with a major distribution system like Hannaford. That's a big job. Is that all yours?
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
geez.
It is. Yeah.
When do you sleep?
My father is in charge of running the crew and tending to the farm. I'm here to help on that, but my main role in the farm is talking to Hannaford, seeing what we need to change, making sure the quality's there, working on sales, picking up new stores, and some days are busier than others, but like I said, today's a good day.
Yeah. Do you sleep?
I do. I do.
Well, I've walked us up towards the back of the parking lot overlooking the fields. What a view you have to start with. It must be nice to just come out here in a nice clean morning and look at that view. It is, and it's really good in the fall with all the fall foliage we'll be having coming off here. Some years I got stuff planted close. I can watch crew right from the dooryard. Other years I'm making trips around the fields checking on crew. But no, it's nice. With all this produce out here, how much pest management do you have to worry about, and what is it you have to worry about? Pest management is a lot. I mean, it's right down from insects you could barely see in the soil right up to deer, and had our first bear this year into our corn. First time since I've been running the farm. That hot, dry summer thing. They're really hitting a lot of everything. They were. We work close with the University of Maine on their integrated pest management. They come out and scout our fields once a week to tell us what to spray and how we should be spraying up, putting us on a schedule. So that way we're not applying more pesticides than we need to. We can stay at their recommendations. And it's one of those things you just goes with the job. Yeah. Goes with the job, yeah. Some of those things I don't think about. It's just second nature. Now, anybody can walk into a Hannaford and buy something from Thomas Farms right now, but that's not the only place you can get food from Thomas Farms. No. We do have a farm stand in Bangor on Broadway next to Tractor Supply. I drove by that yesterday and said, What? Really? I didn't know you were there. Yeah. And then we have a farm stand at our farm in Corinth on the Garland Road. And then we do go to a few private Hannafords.
And that's about the extent of our reach.
Mm-hmm. How about farm share? There are programs
yes,
around.
I'm glad you said that, Bob.
Yeah.
Yes, we do farm share. That's a government-funded program. It allows seniors, I believe, that are over the age of 60, with a low income to get assistance from the government for $50 of vegetables from us a year. There's a sign up in the spring that we have, and then we hand out coupon books, and they can go to either one of our farm stands and use the coupons at our farm stands to get whatever they want. Some people wait till the end of the fall to stock up for winter on squash and potatoes, get them through the winter, and other people use it throughout the summer on corn, cucumbers, tomatoes. It's totally up to the senior how they would like to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, since I'm in the legislature and in politics, I often look at the welfare system and say, is there any way we can reform this? And one of the things that always hits me is this whole farm share program. I don't mind buying people potatoes. I'm not so sure I want to buy them potato chips, but this kind of fresh produce would really help a lot of families if we can make it more accessible to them.
Yes, it does.
Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is down to the farm today, Thomas Farm in Corinth. You walk into any Hannaford and you'll see that the shelves are stocked with as much locally grown food as possible. And a lot of it is grown right here. So far, Paul Thomas and I have been hanging around the storage buildings up here by the road. In a moment, we're hopping on the four-wheeler and taking a look at what's going on down there on those 200 acres. This is Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Thomas Farm in Corinth supplies a lot of locally grown food to Hannaford that you're buying. I'm in the field with Paul Thomas right now, ready to go meet some cabbages, peppers, rutabagas. If you want to know where your food comes from, hop on.
So, Bob, I'm going to take you around our farm. We have a side-by-side that we use. It's actually been years that without a side-by-side, we wouldn't bring a crop in. We was out in Hurricane Katrina, and that's the only vehicle that could go through the fields because they were so muddy.
Really?
Yeah. We
What were you doing Hurricane Katrina?
Oh, there was either picking corn or peppers, and where we ship 6 days a week to Hannaford, it's got to come in. So we put rain suits on the crew and said, we got a job to do and we're going to get it done.
Oh, man. That couldn't have been fun.
No. Yeah. It wasn't. You know, you get soaking wet, but you look back and say, look what I did. Yeah. You know, we brought product in during a hurricane. Mm-hmm. Not many other people can say that. We grow cabbage. We're driving by right now. We don't do a lot of cabbage. We do a small amount for the stores. Then we have summer squash and zucchini that's coming up to us right now. They're actually one of the best patches I've had. We planted it. I looked at the date the other day. We planted it back on May 19th, and it's still producing today.
Now, what do you have to be concerned about with planting in the spring? Do you have to be concerned about things getting all of a sudden too wet? Do you have to worry about late frosts?
Yes, all of the above. Some crops are frost tolerant, so we can plant them a little earlier, but all our curbits, one little hint of a frost and they're going to die. So we have to plant those and say, okay, they're going to germinate in a week. There should be no frost then. We're safe. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we flirt with the devil. We'll say, well, we want to maybe try and jump the mark a little bit. Let's plant one field a little early and see what happens. And sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not.
And if you're not, it goes in the compost pile.
Well, no, we'll just replant the field. The little plant will die, and we'll just go back and replant the field and say, well, it didn't work this year. Mm-hmm. And as you can see, Bob, you can kind of see a green tinge to these fields that are harrowed under. Yep. That's our cover crop coming up, a winter rye.
Okay. Is that your typical cover crop, or you do other things as well?
No, our typical is winter rye. I like winter rye because it's winter hardy. It won't die through the winter. It'll come back this spring, and this is going to start growing as soon as the snow's gone. I like to have it a foot to 18 inches tall before I put it under for the organic matter. And it works really well for us. There are other farms that use different mixes. that works well for them. It's just this is the one that we like using, and it's readily available. It's actually, the seed comes from the state of Maine.
Oh, okay.
So, it's putting back.
Mm-hmm.
And we have tomatoes here beside us. I believe I had 8,000 tomato plants we put in this year on plastic, and 20,000 pepper plants we put in on plastic. The pepper plants, we did that all in one day.
Oh, my. How is that possible?
We have what they call a water wheel transplanter. Two people ride on the back as a steel wheel punches a hole in the plastic and set the plants in as it's being pulled by a tractor.
Oh, because I couldn't imagine doing that many by hand, no matter how big your crew.
Oh, when we first started, it was something else, but now we've kind of got it refined down to less crew and at a better pace, and it works really good for us. I've pulled peppers off my plants that have weighed more than a pound.
Jeez. And when I look down the row, they're all green. I don't see any red from undeveloped peppers.
We only grow green peppers. That's all we plant. They will, some varieties we do have will turn red as the plants get older, but our main market is the green pepper.
So do you send somebody out here every day to go pick the peppers?
6 days a week, there's somebody in the pepper patch picking peppers. We've been picking peppers now, I believe, for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And we'll continue picking until frost kills the plants.
You ever pick pickled peppers?
Peter
Piper pick pickled peppers?
No,
Nothing like that?
nothing like that yet. I've tried some off types of peppers, some hot peppers and stuff. There's a little bit of a market for, but not the market I was looking for. We like doing high volume markets. That's kind of wholesale is what we like doing.
Yeah, that's specialty stuff. There are other people who do that.
There is not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just it doesn't fit into our program.
Well, the marketplace in America has changed. People have gotten more food conscious, and you hear people talking about going vegan or being gluten free. So people are wondering about their food and what's in it much more than they used to.
Yes, they are, and I'm actually one of them. Not that I'm vegan or vegetarian, but we have gone to raising some of our own chickens for meat. At my house, we've got chickens for eggs that we have. We've got a couple pigs down to my house that we decided to try this year. Just a little more conscious where your food comes from, what's in it, and not that there's anything wrong with that. Mm-hmm. Just different way to look at it.
Well, I think it is kind of a big deal. You look at, I go back, let's say, 10 years before there was a lot of local produce in supermarkets, and you look at the produce and say, where did this come from? How did this get grown? What kind of labor put into it? What kind of pesticides did they use? And you just didn't know.
Yeah, especially coming from different countries, and GAP really opened my eyes to what different countries do and how they do it, and some countries are better than others because they know, well, if we lose this export to the U.S., our country's done for. And other countries, well, this is just kind of a side thing. We don't really care. So, it opens your eyes to what there is, and Hannaford has asked all their local farmers not to use GMOs for local close to home. And we have said, okay, we won't do that. And it's just something, hey, if that's what they want, that's what we're going to do.
Well, there's a lot of people out there who aren't trusting GMOs, and to know that the local produce coming from Thomas Farm doesn't have it,
yes,
must be reassuring to people who shop at Hannaford's.
It should be, and I get probably one phone call a week from a store saying, I have a customer asking, is your corn GMO free? And I can say, you can tell them it is GMO free. We're proud to be able to do that for our customers.
I'm traveling the fields at Thomas Farm in Corinth with Paul Thomas. This is one of the major suppliers of local food to supermarkets. We're just coming up in the last of the season's corn, and I'm already wondering, how do you keep the raccoons out of all this? Hey, there are some critters out there that also like to know where their food comes from. We'll find out in a moment. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Every radio show and every station in Maine right now is happening in a comfortable studio somewhere. Not this one. We're out standing in our field, or in this case, Paul Thomas's field. He's showing me where your food comes from, Thomas Farm in Corinth, one of the major vegetable suppliers to Hannaford's in Maine. We're cruising around the back fields, and we pass the cabbages, potatoes, peppers, rutabagas.
This is our last sweet corn field. We're driving by right here. There's actually 4 different varieties in this little 4-acre field. After Labor Day, sweet corn sales seem to drop off, so we don't need quite the volume of corn to go through. So we have different plantings, different varieties, but the last corn is the best corn. It is the sweetest. It takes the longest to grow, but it is the best corn you can get.
If I were a raccoon, I'd think I'd died and gone to heaven.
Yes. Raccoons, porcupines, and skunks do at times raise havoc with cornfields. There's been some years we've had people come in to help with the pest on them. And some years we don't have to. It all depends on the years.
Mm-hmm. So what's the best method? Traps, shotguns,
all of the above.
Yeah.
All of the above. If you name it, I've probably done it, tried it, and go with what works best.
Yeah. If you shoot one, do the rest get the message?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
My oldest stepdaughter actually helped us in one field last night. She was coming home from soccer practice, and we have one squash field that's been getting hurt real bad by squash. Well, one of the deer jumped in front of her car.
Oh, jeez. That's an expensive way to take care of the problem.
It was. Luckily, no damage to the car. Just a little piece of plastic got broken on it, but the deer didn't survive. So I said, well, you couldn't have picked a better spot to do it.
So, obviously, Maine can feed itself.
It can, but you wouldn't get the variety that you would like. I mean, we could feed ourselves. I mean, in the winter, you'd be looking at squash, rutabagas, potatoes. Of course, with Madison, you could have tomatoes, and I'm not sure what else they do in their greenhouses. But, we do need food coming in from California and other places just so you can have the variety when stuff in Maine is not in season.
Yeah. What do you think? Could Maine feed Boston?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a tough question. I mean, because the further north you go, you get into the county, it's hard for them guys with their short growing season to grow what they need. I mean, potatoes is in the county. I mean,
broccoli,
yep, they do. That's one reason I don't grow broccoli on my farm. The Smiths up there do such a good job with broccoli. They go to Hannaford with it. I said, there's no need in me growing broccoli. They do a great job. I can't compete with them. Why even try?
What else don't you grow?
Oh, there's a huge list. I mean,
kumquats right out.
Yeah, I mean, we don't do apples. I have a cousin that has an apple orchard in Etna. It's Conant's.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a family orchard for years. I have an uncle in Garland that has dairy cows. He's been doing that since he was out of high school. Anybody that's in the dairy industry in Maine, if you say Jim Thomas, they'll know my uncle. He's been in it that long. And he's actually, I believe, 76 years old, and he still wakes up at 4 o'clock every morning to feed the cows.
At some point, it must become a habit.
Yeah. But we mainly focus on the main vegetables that people buy every day. Your beans, your cucumbers, your summer squash, zucchini, tomato, peppers. Let's see.
Your run-of-the-mill table fare products.
Yes, yeah.
What you go to Hannaford for.
Yeah, exactly. Because we only do 18 stores, we like I mentioned earlier, we like to do large volumes, so we want to do what the stores will buy and sell a lot of. We go to the greater Bangor area, Hannaford's, Brewer. We go as far north as Lincoln and as far south as Augusta. We do Waterville, Skowhegan, Madison. So, and on your side, Bob, is one of our rutabaga fields. We'll be harvesting that near the end of October. We are actually, don't quote me on this, but I believe we are the largest rutabaga grower east of the Mississippi.
I'm not sure how you make a marketing slogan out of that, but it's kind of cool.
No.
Is it because demand is low in America, or is it because we grow rutabagas very well?
Demand is low, so there's not a lot of people that do it. And I'm the sole supplier on local to the Hannaford warehouse. They've actually taken my rutabagas from Maine and shipped them to their warehouse in New York.
I have to admit, I can never remember a time where I pushed back from the table and said, boy, that was some good rutabaga.
You know, as a kid growing up, you couldn't pay me to eat it. I would not eat it.
Yeah, I think if it were on my plate, I wouldn't know what it was.
Well, and a lot of people look at me and say, I've never had a rutabaga. I said, you've had a rutabaga, you just don't know it. A lot of people in Maine know a rutabaga as a turnip. And it's just a nickname it's got that stuck with it, and people go, so I go, actually, you've had rutabaga, you've never had turnip, because Maine boiled dinner, people put rutabaga in their boiled dinner. And it's real popular in Canada. Rutabagas in Canada are almost like potatoes in Maine, so it's real popular up there. And you get out into the upper Midwest states, I have found out it's fairly popular up there.
My wife sneaks it into my meals now and then because she's trying to make me eat healthier so I'll live longer, and I'm fighting her every step of the way.
Well, Bob, I'm just going to take you around to a couple of our other fields just so you can see what we grow. We're going to stay right here on the home farm, but I'll show you what squash and pumpkins we have coming off, and we can stop there and chat.
Sure.
So right now, Bob, we are in one of the fields that we have just picked up, that we bought. It's roughly a 20-acre piece of land. 6 to 7 acres of that is just pumpkins for Halloween. We shipped it mainly to Hannaford, but I have a lot of markets that buy pumpkins from me. There's Sprague's Nursery right in Bangor.
Oh, yeah.
I've dealt with them now for, I lose track of how many years I've sold pumpkins to Sprague's. We deal with the Campbell True Values down around Waterville, Farmingdale, Madison, Skowhegan, the Pinio's True Value over in Machias. People get my name somehow, and then they call me and say, "Hey, I hear you have pumpkins. Would you mind selling them to us?" And it happens every year. I pick up somebody new that wants 400 or 500 pumpkins. And
when we started the show and we were talking about the history of the farm, and we were talking about, I think, was it 2003, where you basically had 12 acres of potatoes?
Yeah, 2003 we had 12, 15 acres of vegetables.
Yeah.
My father said, I'm going to just raise some vegetables. I'm going to sell to some peddlers and do a couple farm stands, maybe farmer's market. I said, okay. I went to drive and truck that summer, and because I needed to make more money than he could pay me at the time. But I wanted to come back to the farm, so I only drove truck for the summer, came back to the farm that fall. We cut wood throughout the winter. And then the following year, we grew some more. I think we was up to maybe 25 acres, and we had, I think it was extra peas that year. We had some peas we wanted to get rid of, so I stopped into the Broadway Hannaford. That was our first Hannaford. Stopped in there, and I talked to the produce manager. He goes, yeah, I'd buy you peas. So he bought some peas, and as I'm going in to set up our stands in the morning, he's looking on my trailer. He goes, well, why can I buy your cucumbers? I said, yeah, you can buy my cucumbers. What are you paying? He told me the price. I said, I'll sell you cucumbers all day at that price. And then, it kept going from there. He goes, well, how about your sweet corn? I said, well, I can sell you sweet corn, but this is what I got to get. He goes, well, I pay more than that. I said, okay, I'll sell you sweet. People have the image in their head that the grocery stores pay bottom dollar for their produce, and they're not. The Hannaford's prices that they pay the farmers are more than fair. I kind of look at it as, if you can't raise a crop for what Hannaford's willing to pay, you should maybe look at what you're doing and either change your operation, or maybe you shouldn't be a farmer.
Well, God bless America, because we've gone from a few acres, mainly potatoes and a few other crops, to this. Now 200 acres, distributing statewide through Hannaford, so it's available to anybody, anywhere in the state.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
And that's a relatively short period of time.
Yes, and to grow that big, and the Hannaford warehouse buyer is constantly asking me, what else do you have that we can buy from you? What do you grow that we can buy from you to put in our stores?
See, when I think about economic development in rural areas, I just want to bitch slap the government now and then and say, this is success. Do you recognize it?
Yes. I mean,
well, Paul Thomas of Thomas Farms, this has been a delight beyond words. I have enjoyed every minute of this. If you want to see where your food comes from, it's right here in Corinth. High on the hill, Route 94. Can't miss it, and there's even a food stand right out front.
Bob, we're glad to have you here today. I was enjoy meeting you, having you come out to the farm, giving you a tour. And like I said earlier, we would not be where we are today without the support of Hannaford and their local program. So, if you like Thomas Farms, please support us at your local Hannaford.
Buy local, eat local.
Yeah, exactly. Know where your food comes from.
That's it from Thomas Farm in Corinth. My thanks to Paul Thomas for the tour, and a nod to his parents, Frank and Anita Thomas, and all the crew that gets fresh food to you every day. This is where your food comes from. Next weekend, I'll be taking this microphone out of the fields and back into the woods for another episode of Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Doors Equipment, Bar Harbor Whale Watch, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine returns next Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 8, and all shows are archived at 929theticket.com, so you can re-listen or share with anyone online. This is Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket.